Hello fellow ant keepers, and today I'll be moving my Camponotus Nicobarensis colony into a new aesthetic ants nest, telling you how they then escaped from that new setup, tried to colonize my Monocarubra setup, and how I stopped them from escaping in the end. Back to the aesthetic ants nest, it took me 8 whole months to get a colony of the size that I would feel happy putting in this nest. That's so long that this nest is actually discontinued by aesthetic ants now. You just can't buy it anymore. Why am I moving my ants into this nest specifically? Well, it's because you guys said so. 63% of my Instagram followers voted for this aesthetic ants nest instead of a natural setup to move my Camponotus Nicobarensis into. It might also partially be that I want to improve my chances of being sent stuff for this channel, because I've been sent 3 things and I've only done a follow-up video on one of them, which it's not really that good of a look. But because I believe in proportional voting, I will also be using a little bit of the other option that I had on my Instagram poll, a natural setup. Around 37% of you guys over on Instagram voted for a natural setup, so what I'm going to do is a sort of blend of the aesthetic ants nest and some sort of natural outworld and a little bit of nature inside the nest as well. The nest will be somewhat naturalized by putting moss inside it, and the outworld will have moss, rocks, bark chips, all manner of different stuff. I'm going to be putting patches of moss all around the aesthetic ants nest. I just hope that I'll be able to keep the humidity in the nest high enough so that they can thrive. Also, I think it will be quite interesting to see whether the ants prefer nesting on the PLA surface of the nest or on the moss itself. As for decorating the outworld, I'll be going with some clay balls and charcoal first, some bark chips, then some cocoa fibre, some mosses, a well-placed central piece of stone with smaller pieces around it to complement the bigger piece. How will I be actually moving my ants into here? Well, if you've been watching my channel for long enough, then you'll know what option I generally go for. So, say it with me. Place the whole previous setup in the outworld of the new setup and unplug everything. That's it. Yeah, this is the reason why I don't have company-made outworlds with lids, by the way. It's because, you know, you can't fit the whole setup in there and close the lid. Not that I'm a cheapskate or anything. Anyway, let's do a little check-up on the size of this colony before we move them into the new setup. The ant kit nest is looking about as full as it was a month ago, but the difference now is that they're also nesting in the outworld. I think this colony has got to be approaching around 300 workers now, maybe more. There's this weird green stuff growing where the 2 different types of tubing are used to connect the outworld and nest join up. I don't like the look of it, but I don't think that it's actually harming the ants in any way. And coming back, I think I've definitely overwatered it. There's condensation absolutely everywhere. Luckily there are no ants in here yet, so I just unscrewed the top viewing panel and then wiped that off. Let's plug the nest into the outworld. Okay, let's get to actually moving them in. Unplugging the ant kit nest and placing the whole setup in 3, 2, 1, and done. To speed up the moving process, I'm going to unscrew the ant kit nest. As I was filming this, I saw an ant walk straight over the baby powder barrier. I thought this was because it had not properly dried, but as you'll see later, there's a bit more to it. So, realizing that the baby powder barrier would take at least an hour more to dry and become useful, I saw that there was only one option to stop the ants from escaping. A moat. I saw some ants die in the water. Obviously I don't like to see any of my ant colonies suffer, but I decided that it would be much worse if the colony escaped and started raising hell in my other colony setups. For the greater good, you know. I decided to reposition the outworld and nest for better shooting angles, and I got a load of ants on my hands, but I think the footage is worth it. At this point, the Aesthetic Ants nest was almost completely empty, and same thing with the ant kit nest, which means that the only possible place that they could be nesting is under the stone. I'm pretty sure the entire colony is under the big rock that I put in earlier. I guess this is part of the reason that most people don't do combination artificial and natural setups. I wanted to film this, but I couldn't really do it without lifting up the nest and the outworld, which still had some ants in it, and lifting up the stone, so I just couldn't really get any shots of it. So in order to encourage the ants to move into the Aesthetic Ants nest, I placed a heat mat under it. These Camponotus nicobarensis are super inquisitive and they also love heat. So I think in a few hours they'll have definitely found this new warm nesting space and at least started moving into it. And as I predicted, 2 hours later, quite a few of them have moved in. Unfortunately, because of the heat, a lot of condensation happened on the viewing panel, but I can't really unscrew the viewing panel to mop it up anymore, since, you know, there are ants in there. The most I can do is angle the nest slightly so the droplets run off to the sponge. Thinking that everything was fine, I watched some Spider-Man with the family and ate some pizza.
Pizza time.
And then about halfway through, I would say, I checked up on the ants, expecting more to be in the Aesthetic Ants nest, but overall nothing that big, and I saw this. Finally happened. I've always seen escapes happen on YouTube and social media, especially I saw escape videos on a certain YouTube channel that rhymes with AntScapes, but I never expected an escape of this size to happen to me. This came as an absolutely huge shock. Not only were the ants walking straight over the baby powder barrier in their new setup, they were walking across the ant shelf, up the glass sides of the Myrmecoruber tank, across their baby powder barrier, so I know that it definitely wasn't just the one in the new setup that hasn't finished drying, and into the Myrmecoruber setup. There must have been about 20 Camponotus nicobarensis workers in there, and a fair few soldiers. This was my live reaction while filming what was happening. As you can hear, I just couldn't believe that this has happened to me. So I scooped up as many Camponotus nicobarensis workers as possible and put them back in their new setup. And then I moved my Myrmecoruber setup about 3 meters away onto the carpet, because surely the Camponotus nicobarensis couldn't go down all this shelving and across the carpet to the setup. At around 6:45 on Monday the 6th of December, my mum came into my room and told me that there were ants all over the carpet in the ant room. Unfortunately, I was too stressed to film all of this, so I'll just have to describe it to you. When I came in, there was maybe a patch of like 30 ants on the floor, on their way to the Myrmeca tank. The ants must have sent out scouts at night to try and find this Myrmecoruber setup that they had been so interested in invading the previous day. And they travelled 3 whole meters to find it. I scooped the patch of ants up as quickly as I could and found about 10 ants in the Myrmecoruber setup. So I scooped those up too and put them back in their original setup. There weren't any dead Myrmecoruber workers anywhere, but I don't even see dead Myrmecoruber workers normally, so I think that wherever they keep their dead, it must be underground. I'm really not sure how many Myrmecoruber workers could have been killed during these raids. Although worker deaths are definitely concerning, I just hope that the Camponotus nicobarensis didn't get to the brood, to the queen, maybe. I think not, because the Myrmecoruber tunnels are quite a lot smaller than the Camponotus nicobarensis can fit into, but still, The only way to tell if the queen has been killed is to wait around a month and see if there's a sharp drop in the amount of workers. Needless to say, I had to find a proper way to keep these Camponotus nicobarensis ants contained. But before I tell you how I did that, did you know that 0% of the people that watch my videos are actually subscribed? Okay, that's a lie. That's a made up statistic, but this video took a lot longer than usual, so long that all of my stats have dropped, like, a lot, so it would mean a lot to me if you could just like and subscribe. Anyway, let me introduce you to some pretty incredible new escape prevention technology. So here is an old tank that I have another baby powder barrier on. But these little escape artists might actually get over that, because they've proved that they're actually pretty good at getting over baby powder barriers in the last week or so. So I'm going to be using olive oil as a barrier as well. There are two big problems with using this tank as escape prevention. One, there are these silicone joins up the side that give the ants some extra purchase, so I think it'll be easier for the ants to get up there than anywhere else. So on those silicone joins, I ran the olive oil all the way down to the base of the tank. And secondly, I need to put a heat mat in here, and the cable will allow the ants to, once they've escaped their first setup, to just climb straight up the cable and completely bypass the second layer of barriers. So I rubbed some olive oil over the cable and further up the cable some baby powder as well. That night I could barely sleep. I kept thinking, what would I do if the ants escaped again? I didn't really have any other means to contain them. It's like I was one of those stock traders that are scared of going asleep because they think they're going to lose all their money. The key difference being that I, an ant keeping YouTuber, actually contribute something to society. I woke up the next day and checked on the ants. No escapes at all. This is really, really good news, but I need to figure out another setup, as with this setup I can't really water the ants properly. Do you have any ideas for how I could create a setup for these ants that will stop them from escaping completely? Leave your suggestions in the comments down below. And with that said, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, then like and subscribe. If you didn't, well, then don't, and I'll see you. This has taken so long. 34 minutes to film this. And that's just the talking bit. Damn. Anyway, in the next video. Here's the cup. Wait, where are the ants?